every Wednesday at 12 to 12:30 Eastern Time, or sign up for updates on Mike's mailing list at salessensesolutions.com. Mike appreciates you listening and wishes you good luck on your next sales call.
Well, welcome. It's Mike Krause with the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show. I'm really excited to have our guest, Ellia, Kassoff, today and on our show, and he's considered one of the top recruiters in the country. He's spent over 14 years of experience as an executive recruiter and industry expert for high technology companies. According to industry experts, he became the #1 executive recruiter in the industry for 2009, which included closing the largest single deal in the industry. As a graduate of Boston University School of Management, Mr. Kassoff's background consists of over 6 years in software sales and marketing within the high-tech industry before starting SSR. So without further ado, Ellia, how are you this morning?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more about recruiting. As we all know, that recruiting is a sales process, and you have to sell yourself before another. What has made you unique in the industry, especially in a down economy?
Well, I think, when other recruiters were out there trying to figure out, how to get their next deal, and some of them were leaving the industry because of, obviously, the economy, I kind of started to look backwards and started to say, okay, how can I add additional value to the clients? And what I thought about was, even more so today, customers are looking for very high value. And I started approaching some of my clients and also some new clients and saying, what can we do to get you the best people? And one was a client that I had that, was, or I should say, a group of candidates that were starting to look, and I started to package them up and started to market them using, very high value statements of, this group, I'm the only person that knows this group. In this case, I did. And this group can add X amount of value to your bottom line. And, I quantified it and started shopping it around. I think, a lot of salespeople are worried about or don't want to go to the highest part of a company, the CEO or the second in command. And I had no problem doing that. I started calling the CEOs of some of these companies and saying, I've got a very high-value solution for you. And one company said, yeah, let's talk. Because they said, these guys can bring me over $1 billion in new revenue, and I want to see them. And so and a lot of people were saying, Elliot, no CEO is going to talk to you. No, come on, they're busy. And I said, you know what? It's all a matter of trying. The worst case scenario, nothing happens. But the fun part is actually trying. And sure enough, not only did we get sign-off from the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, but I was working with the #2 and #3 in command for that company, bypassing HR, bypassing everyone, because you work at such a high level. And I think that was the key thing, and I've been replicating that ever since.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. A lot of people operate in fear, and they're afraid to talk to the C-level person, and they're just like everyone else. They put their pants on one leg at a time. And what are some strategies when selling to the C-level suite have you used that you find to be effective?
Well, there's the old saying about the gatekeeper, right? How do you get around the gatekeeper? You have to make sure that your pitch is so compelling the gatekeeper will be forced to talk to the CEO and the executives and say, I've got this person who called me, and here's what he's got. If they don't, they're going to look really bad. And that's exactly what I did. The way I got through to this client was I simply called the CEO's office and talked to their assistant. And I introduced myself. I said, I'm the only person that knows this group of people, which directly competes with you. And they're only going to be on the market a short time. And we really need to talk to the CEO. Within 3-4 hours, I had a call back. And that was from the #2 person at the company who already had a discussion with the CEO about the opportunity that they had in front of them. And I got to tell you, when you fly a group of executives to the client and you have the number 2 guy who's roughly in charge of multi-billions of dollars in revenue, and you have people coming up to you who are under him saying, I have never seen him take a whole day and spend with anyone, and, this is amazing, and you got to go, you kind of chuckle, and then later on, the guy turns to you in the meeting and says, Ellia, I've never met you before. I don't know how the heck you pulled this off, but this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. That you feel like a great sales guy. And then he turns to HR and says, give him anything he wants. You'll never hear that. You'll never hear that if you're at the lower levels. But it's all a matter of trying. I had, quite a few people that were saying, Elliot, there's no way. You're not going to talk to these people. If your message is so compelling, it'll get through the door, any door.
I agree. The message has to be perfect. And a lot of times people do not rehearse their message. They kind of just ad hoc or cold call it without rehearsing. And you only have those 3 to 5 seconds to deliver that high-impact message to that C-level person, and you better make it count. There's so many times I find sales reps that do not do it correctly. And just like you stated, they're afraid to call, or other sales reps are saying, oh, he'll never return your call. And I always remember that with Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but he went right to the top of the list and started calling. And it's like you just mentioned, it's so powerful for the C-level to say, give him or her whatever he wants versus trying to fight up the food chain. So.
Oh, yeah, and, there was a lot of people that were lower down the company, especially HR, that hated it because they had to give me a contract that was pretty much what I wanted. And then, in fact, in a call with HR, he said in front of them, Ellie, if you don't like what they give you, please give me a call. And this is a guy who changes his phone number every 6 months because so many people are trying to get a hold of him. So, my candidates were excited. They all got hired all at once, which, like I said, became the largest deal, from what I understand, in recruiting, the recruiting business. And it was in the worst time of, we're talking '09, which is, pretty much the worst time in our economy. So it just goes to show you that there's business to be found if you understand the value that you bring, and if you can make it so compelling and tell a client, if you do this, you can save this or make this kind of money off of this group or product. But you also have to quantify. You have to explain your reasoning. You can't just say, hey, you're going to make tons of money, you'll be so happy. You have to explain your reasoning very quickly, and that's the key. So it was an amazing time for me and it happened so quickly that you were kind of euphoric for about a week.
I do like that feeling. I know what you're referring to. It's like the sales high. You hit the home run and you did it right. And you bring up a good point there too. It happened so fast. That's the funny part, is when you're dealing with a decision maker, they make decisions. That's why they're called decision makers. When you're dealing with like the B or lower down in the food chain, they're not used to making these decisions, and then therefore they're afraid to make a decision because they don't want to make the wrong decision. I find that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, like I said, it comes back to you have to make it compelling. Even before I got on the phone with the person, this number 2 person, he already had a call with the CEO and discussing this because the bread is only warm for a short period, and if you miss it, it's hard to warm up again. It doesn't taste the same, So it's that's the key. So they already told me, even before we started the call, that I already talked to the CEO. He gave me total carte blanche to deal with this. We know the group. We know we have to add at least $1 billion of new revenue. We also know that the economy is so small, and that this space is so small that if we can bring these people on, we know that they're going to bring their clients, which is one of my compelling issues. So it has to, they have to know it's going to go fast. And I got to say, IBM is a perfect case scenario. IBM was also in the fray. I had talked to their number 2 person as well, and IBM was too slow. When we had the group pretty much signed and sealed with the other company, IBM calls me back. They were 3 days late in calling back, saying, "Hi, we're interested, but we need to talk about contracts first." And I said, "Guess what?" I said, "Your competition hasn't even mentioned a contract. They've already want to hire these people, and you're too late." So it kind of goes to show you the differences. And I actually have a blog that I put up where I wrote an article about why can't, is IBM capable of hiring the best people? And they're capable of buying the best people through acquisition, but not hiring them. It's a great analogy when you see, you have their competitor who was already on the ball, who already had flown the whole group and myself out there, spent the whole day, and then the whole deal is done without even talking, my contract, and then you have IBM that says, "Okay, guess what? We're ready to go. Oh, but we got to talk about the contract first." So you can really see the two differences.
I find that the large companies, too, sometimes get in their own way with all the process that they've created around things, and they make it very difficult to do business with. If the solution is right and the product is right and the timing is right, the contract should not be an issue. We'll always find an agreement through that process, but it's kind of funny that they led with that first without even knowing the solution. So that's
right,
weird.
and I had all these same executives. I'm talking to the like I said, the number 2 person in charge of consulting, worldwide consulting for the company. So we were still on target. I was talking to the right person. It's just she said, "Well, you have to talk. I have to talk to the head of HR first, and she's in China." Which is funny, with a broken laptop. That's what she said. So we'll have to get back to you in a couple of days. And I said, fine. And I told them the urgency, that these people are only going to be around. And I mentioned, in good faith that, you have other competitors that are talking to these people. And that's another thing salespeople don't do. I mean, they don't, and part of that value that they bring, they also have to, put everything on the table and say, you're not the only one that's going to be buying this. If you don't get to it, the other competitor will. Because they need to know that and work appropriately. And even with that, the global head of HR didn't get back to me till it was too late. But so those are, it's, and you know what? And my client that hired these people, they hired them all partner level, which their head of executive recruiting was there at the meeting, and she even said, "Do you understand it takes about 6 months to hire each partner, and we're supposed to now we're told now that we have to hire these people in 3 weeks. That's unheard of. We've never. I love this. This is the statement. We've never done this before." And I said, "Guess what? There's always a first time. Or when someone says, 'Gee, that's not our policy,' I always say, well, that's not your policy typically to keep the people, the majority out. But there's always a change in policy when something comes up like this. And whoever jumps at it first is going to be the winner." And my client really understood that and jumped at it, and they succeeded. In fact, they exceeded their numbers for that year, and this person now even runs a larger chunk of the company. So it's everything worked out very well, and they brought in, I believe, close to $250 million in new revenue. This is my group that I put in. So now we're talking real numbers. Not only did they bring in that kind of revenue, but they're also starting up a whole new division for the client, which they've never had. So now you've got an additional revenue stream that was being created by some of the people that I put in. And I put all that stuff right up front, and the client understood that.
Absolutely. You've also sold urgency, and you were telling the truth along the way with honesty, and urgency. And I also feel that you're exactly right. A salesperson does not tell the whole story. Like, for example, I'm going to be going down the street later. If you don't like this, that's okay. And the takeaway, and I use that all the time. It might not be for you. That's okay. I'm going to find someone that it is for, and that's okay. Right. It's such a powerful tool to use, but most salespeople are order takers, not salespeople. They don't control the sales process or go through the sales process. And you'll find this stat funny. 85% of salespeople will offer a price concession without even being asked. So you think about that. I mean, you didn't negotiate on price on that deal, did you?
Did not. In fact, I charged them full price because when you've attached the kind of value that you have and they understand the value, there's no need for a discount. But I understand what you're saying. Some recruiters will say, well, tell you what, if you hire 3 of them, I'll give you the other 3 at a discount. Well, why? I mean, I'm a big fan of value-based pricing. My old professor, Reed Holden, he's well known in the pricing space, and we have these discussions. And that's the biggest peeve is salespeople discounting for absolutely no reason. Absolutely, that means you haven't really sold the value. You're selling the commodity side of price versus product A, B, C, and price versus product, and you can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does that make the client feel that you did discount? I always look at it the other way, too. It's like, well, if I discount, how is that going to, that just doesn't feel good. Because if I discount for you, then what about if you are talking to another company and they find out that I discounted over here and I discount over there? How does that make me look? I used to sell to attorneys all the time, and they would always try to discount, and I would say, no, I can't do that. That's not fair. You're at a bar meeting, and all of a sudden Attorney John talks to Attorney Smith, and you guys talk about Mike Krause and with the product you just bought, and you bring up 2 different prices. That's not fair. And you're not selling value at that point. And it's not always about price. It's very rarely about price.
And you know what? During that whole transaction, price was never an issue. As I mentioned, you have the number 2 guy sitting there in the meeting with his executives who he flew in from around the world, and he turns to me and turns to the global head of HR and says, "Give Ellia anything he wants." Well, that's definitely not a pricing issue. Why would you also, a salesperson has to be very confident of what they're selling, because that's the thing I think where people get into problems is where they're not confident in the product that they're selling, and they're looking at it as a commodity versus a value. And I was so sure of these people and what their capabilities were. And then if they were hired, they would bring in all these large clients. I was in no case would I discount, because I knew that the client would be making, I was thinking, and even the client was saying, I think these guys have a potential of making over $1 billion in new sales. The client said it to me. So the client already understood the value and was conveying that to me. Why would I discount?
Absolutely.
And it was a perfect sales cycle because everything clicked starting from the beginning. You just have to find the right person. I think salespeople also tend to get a little lazy, and they don't make enough calls. They just want to make a sale, and they don't find, in some ways, they don't find the best customer. It's an opportunity cost, right? If you find a customer that's, I could probably use your product, but I'm not sure. And then if you make 50 more calls and you find a customer that says, oh my God, I need your product immediately, well, which one are you going to gravitate towards? Which one is going to be, less price sensitive? And I think a lot of salespeople stop at the first call and they try to work that client that says, I could probably use it. They're not showing the highest value, but they go, okay, well, it's a sale. If you take 10 or 15 of those, you're not going to make the kind of revenue that you expect until you make more calls and find the customer that's really in pain and focus on qualifying those so well.
Agreed. And I also find that the salespeople that are lazy, their call into dead accounts, for example, that just are not qualified. They're never going to move on a decision, and they waste a lot of time. But there's a comfort level when you start calling into a dead account, because then you don't have to face that horrible thing called rejection. And rejection is just part of the process. It's important to understand that rejection is okay. It's okay. That's just part of it. And when you find the right person with the right solution, that is critical.
Right. There were, during that process, when I was shopping around this group, there were some companies that said, we're not interested. I was like, okay, fine, next. And some said, well, I'm interested, but I'm not sure. I said, well, you've got to be sure, because this is only going to, be on the table for a week or two. So you just got to keep calling and calling until you find the right the company or the right client that has the most pain. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times I think people don't understand from a non-salesperson that when you are looking for a new career, that it is a sales process. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about how they should approach finding a new job, especially with a stat you told me before, 9.6% unemployment rate? That's very high. So how can they navigate through that?
This is something that's really that I'm really trying to push hard with some of the other top recruiters in our industry, and is that the whole interviewing and job search machine is broken. You have a methodology that's about 60 to 70 years old, and that is write up a resume, write your cover sheet, and start sending it to everybody. And I think if people looked at themselves as more of a salesperson, which, by the way, everyone is a salesperson at some point, whether you're selling a movie ticket or selling your sister to go to lunch with her, you're selling people on to do things. And I think when it comes to interviewing and a job search, people forget that they are a salesperson. And what you have to do is focus on your value. And it's not just throwing resumes out on websites and submitting them through to people without knowing who they are. You have to focus on what are your strengths and go out there and, for example, I use social media. I talk about LinkedIn. I talk about some of these other Facebook, for example, and how to use these resources. And I said, what you got to do, instead of submitting resumes to everybody, which I consider more of a lottery, hey, guess what? You got 3 interviews based on submitting as many resumes. I tell people, get on the phone, go to LinkedIn, find companies that interest you, and call up the heads of these companies, or call up the regional managers or the VPs, and talk to them more from a casual discussion than an interview. In other words, I'm for informational interviews. I think they are very, very important, and I think that that is something that you have to understand. Asking people all about what's important to them, what they like about their job, all that stuff is very important. And going in, and I would say to the point of asking for meetings with these clients. And you'd be surprised when people are asked about their jobs, their careers, they'll open up. And they'll start talking about, why don't you come on in? Why don't you talk to me? I'd like to hear what you have to say. And candidates tend to forget that.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. They forget that and what I would refer to as the spray and pray. They're just throwing those resumes out there and hoping for someone to give them a call back. That's just not the economy that we're in right now. You have to be aggressive. You have to want that job, and you have to have a fit. That a lot of times people think that, well, I'll just get a job. Well, that's not 100% true. They're looking at you just as much as you're looking at them.
Right.
And it has to be a strategic fit. People just don't hire people anymore just to have more bodies around.
Nope. Right, and it's a matter of making lots of calls, talking to these individuals, saying, hey, you know what, I'd like to know more about you. Tell me about, do you like the company you're at? Do you, how did you get the job? Tell me about you. And most of these hiring managers, they never get that question. No one ever focuses on them. And you do enough of those calls, you'll get a lot of people saying, hey, come on in, let's talk. I want to know more about you. Or you're saying, hey, do you have a moment to get some coffee? I'd love to know more about you. And they go, sure. And then when you're in the middle of discussion, they're going to say, hey, you know what? I happen to have a buddy of mine, Joe, in the next cubicle. He's got 3 openings. I think you'd be perfect for it, because now they're not thinking of you as someone looking for a job. They're thinking of you as someone who really knows their stuff, and you're building rapport with them, and you're selling yourself, and you're selling the value that you bring. And so I think that a lot of people are scared to make those phone calls. They'd rather just submit a resume without knowing anyone. But I'll guarantee you, a lot of times, if you do this process, you're going to end up, in some cases, not even showing a resume till the end of the sales cycle. It's, in other words, when you're about to get an offer and the manager says, hey, by the way, I need a copy of your resume for HR. Oh, sure, no problem. So then you've done it right. If that's if they're going to ask for the resume at the very end, because they're not looking at a resume, they're looking at the person.
Absolutely.
But I go more into that.
I believe we have a caller. Let's see if I can patch him in. Hang on a moment.
Sure.
Yes. Hello, caller. Yes. Do you have a question for Ellia? You have a question? No? I guess not. Okay. There is someone there, but maybe they hit a call by accident. So, okay. So continue. We only have a few minutes left.
Sure.
Tell them a little bit more about some tips and tricks when they're going in and navigating through a recruiter, and what to look for and what not to look for, etc. And then close this out with how they can get in touch with you and maybe utilize some of the services that you offer.
Sure. Well, the first thing is, when you're looking for a recruiter, I mean, it doesn't take much brain power to understand when someone clicks and someone doesn't click. I think that you've got to find someone who knows the industry. There's a lot of recruiters out there who really don't know the industry that they might be recruiting for, and you could figure that out in about 5 minutes. You also have to figure out, a good recruiter is going to take the best part of you, the best value that you bring, and be able to convey that, be able to spin certain things to a positive nature, always making sure that whatever they say is factual and ethical. I think that's a key thing. A lot of recruiters will say anything and to get the candidate through the door, and then the client gets upset when the candidate is not what they requested. So you have to find someone who really knows the industry and who's been doing this for a while, who understands people. The next part is you have to really give them the good, bad, and the ugly, as I say. Tell them everything about yourself, including you have to go over the resume with them and make sure that the recruiter understands your best features and what they should be putting forward. And also, it doesn't hurt, and recruiters are going to hate me for this, but it doesn't hurt to ping a recruiter when every 2 weeks or so, just to see how things are going. Because it's the old squeaky wheel scenario, right? We get lots of calls, lots of resumes, and it comes down to the person who really wants the job, who wants to spend time with you to make sure that you fully understand them. Those are the ones that are going to get the job.
Absolutely. How can the listeners get a hold of you, and what type of services can you offer the listeners?
Sure. So you can get. I've got a few things. You've got my we're redesigning my website, but it's ssrcorp.com. And you can also get a hold of me on my phone number, which is 949-497-0077. And, those are the best things. We've also, I've got a blog. If you, when you go to, you can give me a call or email me at Kassoff, Kassoff, at ssrcorp.com. And I can send you all the information for my blog, and of course I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, you name it. So I'm all over the place. And I'm more than happy to, if people do have questions about their careers or resumes or anything like that, I've been more than happy to help them out. Even if I'm not in their specific industry, I can definitely give them some tips and tricks to get that job, and to also remind them that they're a salesperson. I have a lecture that I give, which I'm going to be putting online shortly, which pretty much is, tells people everything they need to know about the whole search process and about looking for a job from beginning to end, including the interview process, which really takes on a whole sales concept. The actual face-to-face interview process. So those are the things that I should have for you if you send me an email.
Okay, great. Well, Ellia, I really enjoy speaking with you this afternoon, and I know the listeners got a lot out of it, and I've learned a lot too. So I really appreciate your time, and thanks again for joining us today at the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show. And I wish everyone good luck on your next sales call, and tune in next Wednesday at 12 o'clock again. So thanks again, Ellia, and have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you.